Hey everyone, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are literally traveling back in time today to the 14th to 16th centuries to explore an absolutely incredible period in world history, the Renaissance. If you've ever found yourself wondering how Europe managed to transition out of the dark, medieval era and spark this massive global transformation in art, science, and thought, well, you're in exactly the right place. Think of this era as a giant historic awakening that pretty much built the foundation for the modern world we live in today. Let's get into it.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the rise of humanism, the power of the press, a revolution in art, the scientific awakening, and finally, reforms in religion.
Starting right off with Section 1, the rise of humanism. This is the philosophical shift that started it all.
So you might be wondering, why did this massive transformation kick off in Italy of all places? Well, starting around the 12th century, a huge expansion in trade created a really wealthy class of people in Italian commercial cities. And this newfound wealth, it was a total game changer. It helped fund universities and sparked a massive revitalization of ancient Greek and Roman ideas. Basically, it created the perfect breeding ground for the Renaissance to bloom.
Now, to really understand this, we have to look at what education was like before. Prior to this era, learning was strictly controlled by the church, focusing almost entirely on religious scriptures. But humanism completely flipped the script. It was this profound shift where people started focusing on human affairs, our own history, and our artistic skills. Education suddenly expanded way beyond just religious texts, and it fundamentally changed how humanity viewed its own potential. Moving on to Section 2, the power of the press. Talk about a massive leap in technology.
Okay, imagine this. Before the Renaissance, knowledge was super restricted. Why? Because every single book or manuscript had to be painstakingly copied out by hand. Literally, by hand. Think about how long that would take. Because of this, education was limited to a very, very small elite group. But then, almost out of nowhere, the ability to print thousands of copies in a fraction of the time came along and completely revolutionized how knowledge was shared across the globe.
And the machine that made this impossible dream a reality? Johannes Gutenberg's revolutionary printing press. Invented in the 15th century, this mechanical marvel was the absolute key to spreading Renaissance knowledge. Honestly, without it, this great awakening might have just stayed trapped inside a few Italian cities and never reached the rest of the world.
Thanks to the printing press, the ideas of some truly incredible minds could now be widely read by everyday people, rather than just being locked away in a single dusty library. Brilliant writers started emerging all across Europe. We're talking about heavy hitters like Dante in Italy, William Shakespeare in England, and Erasmus in France. Their mass-produced literature basically threw gasoline on the fire of humanism.
Which brings us to Section 3, a revolution in art. This was a visual transformation unlike anything seen before. Before this era, art was pretty much exclusively themed around religious figures to inspire devotion. Jesus, Mother Mary, the saints. That was really it. But as the Renaissance took hold, artists shifted their focus to worldly affairs. They started painting everyday life and really celebrating humanity by portraying kings, queens, princes, and prominent historical figures.
You can clearly see this shift take hold in places like Florence, Italy. It became the absolute center of this new, vibrant form of painting. This is the exact environment that gave birth to legendary masterpieces like the Mona Lisa, for example. And, this transformation wasn't just happening on canvas. Architecture underwent a massive revival too, imitating the sheer grandeur of ancient Rome. Builders started using round arches, tall pillars, and these massive hemispherical domes. St. Peter's Basilica in Rome is a crowning achievement of this era, and it showcases some truly breathtaking work by legendary figures like Michelangelo and the great architect Raphael.
All right, on to Section 4, the scientific awakening. This was all about questioning convention. Because of this new humanist mindset, society was suddenly encouraged to use critical reasoning rather than just blindly following tradition. Take Nicholas Copernicus, for example. He was a brilliant mathematician and astronomer, and he perfectly represents a generation of thinkers who decided to actually study the natural world to figure out how it worked, instead of just accepting what they had always been told.
And this kind of scientific reasoning led to some explosive new discoveries. Copernicus literally proved mathematically that the Earth is spherical. Meanwhile, the revival of Ptolemy's world map massively expanded our geographic knowledge. When you combine that with tools like the compass and the ability to measure the North Star's angle, wow! Explorers suddenly had the exact tools they needed to embark on these incredibly ambitious ocean voyages, completely opening up the globe for the first time.
And finally, Section 5, Reforms in Religion.
It was only a matter of time before people started questioning the church itself.
Consequent to all this scientific and intellectual advancement, people naturally began to turn their critical thinking toward the most powerful institution of the time. They started questioning teachings they had previously accepted as absolute truth, and they really challenged the unlimited powers of the Catholic Church. Figures like John Wycliffe and Erasmus began severely criticizing the corruption they were seeing among certain priests, and this laid the absolute groundwork for the Protestant Reform movement.
A prime example of this explosion of reform is Martin Luther, a German professor at the University of Wittenberg. Let's quickly walk through how this played out. First, through his own deep studies, Luther realizes that certain teachings of the Church actually contradict the teachings of the Bible. Second, he's absolutely shocked to see a priest in his own city selling indulgences, which were essentially pardons for sins that you could just buy with cash. Third, he decides to take a stand, and he actually pastes a leaflet containing his severe criticisms right onto the door of the church. And finally, step 4. As a result, Luther is removed from the Catholic Church. But remember our friend the printing press? Because of it, Luther's critical views didn't just disappear. They were mass-produced and spread like wildfire across all of Europe, sparking sweeping religious reforms.
It is just amazing how humanism, the printing press, art, science, and religious reform all layered together to literally build the modern world we know today. So, my final question for you is this: how will you use the reasoning and curiosity of the Renaissance in your own life today to question the world around you? If you enjoyed this explainer and want to keep exploring history together, make sure to subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you never miss out. See you next time.